Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go out to the lefts, we go out to the rights, we go out to the middle and independents, we go out to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, March 27, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, to let you know that we do try to be our best to be a news podcast, which means we only get our sources for the most reputable places with award-winning journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, Newsmax, The Blaze, Daily Wire, whatever extreme left or extreme right feeds are out there. We just simply go for the places that give the facts, nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So how do we go from here, guys? Well, we don't really got a lot to go from here, except that, Monday was supposed to bring some interesting news. And, it didn't really disappoint.
Minute, an appeals court reducing the bond in his civil fraud case by more than half to $175 million. The trial judge had set it at more than $450 million. Mr. Trump praising the ruling.
What they do is they do election interference, which is court cases, and let's try and tie him up and let's take as much of his money as possible. I respect the appellate division for substantially reducing that ridiculous amount of money.
With no lenders willing to cover the staggering penalty while he appeals, Mr. Trump was facing the prospect of New York's Attorney General seizing his iconic properties and bank accounts as soon as today, but now has 10 days to come up with the far smaller bond. Mr. Trump saying he has the cash and was pressed by NBC's Garrett Haig.
And now that the bond's been reduced, are you going to start putting money into your campaign?
Well, first of all, it's none of your business, frankly, but I might.
The court found Mr. Trump falsely inflated the value of his properties to get banks to give better loan terms. His attorneys are appealing, saying there were no victims, that the banks were repaid. But today, New York Attorney General Letitia James highlighted the former president is still on the hook should he ultimately lose his appeal, saying Donald Trump is still facing accountability for his staggering fraud. The $464 million judgment plus interest against Donald Trump and other defendants still stands. Meanwhile, the presumptive GOP nominee sat stone-faced in a different courtroom today, receiving a serious setback. A judge in Manhattan setting a new date of April 15th for the first-ever criminal trial of a former president. Facing charges of doctoring his company's records to cover up an alleged affair before the 2016 election, Mr. Trump's legal team today failed to convince the judge from delaying the trial any further.
I don't know how you can have a trial that's going on right in the middle of an election. Not fair. They're all trying to damage Trump as much as possible. It's having the reverse effect.
And Laura, so this trial will get underway in 3 weeks. The former president was asked today whether he would testify in the case.
Yes, Lester, and he says he would have no problem testifying, saying he's done nothing wrong. And he did take the stand in his civil fraud trial, but a criminal trial comes with very different risks.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second, folks. We were at a point where Monday was the deadline. Monday was the deadline for Trump to turn around and say either pony up the $464 million or the New York AG was about to go ahead and move on properties. Let's just be honest. We all thought Trump Tower would get seized on Monday morning. So it is weird, very weird, that the appeals court, which again, all sounds great and legal, but the appeals court waited until practically the 11th hour to turn around and sit there and say, well, the judgment against Dorito was a little heavy and excessive, so we're going to lower it. Now, for a lot of people, especially those on Truth Social and those are a part of MAGA cults, are trying to defend this as saying, well, appeals courts do this all the time. they turn around and lower it. They turn around and lower the fines and give people extensions in order for them to be able to appeal their decisions. We wouldn't really be against this except for two things. One, they waited until right up until the deadline of the original timeline that he was given to cough up the money, which, by the way, no lender has signed on to, no broker has, no underwriter has agreed to, and he supposedly, for a man that literally had the money, decided not to pay it. At the same time, now they have sat there and said, well, the judgment against him might be too the judgment amount might be too harshly. And because it's too harshly, we have to go ahead and lower it to 175. Let me get this straight. This man had well over 20 days to come up with nearly $500 million, and you're telling me he had a problem with money? At the same time, the reporter there still had a wonderful question. Your fine is your appeal now is $175 million. Will you go ahead and pay it? Well, that's frankly none of your business. No, that's kind of what you're aiming for, because you are aiming to make sure your properties didn't get sold, number one. Number two, you still claim innocence, that your lawyers are saying, oh, it was a victimless crime. How is it a victimless crime? The banks were repaid. That doesn't change the fact that Trump allegedly, well, now he's found guilty of it. I guess we can say it, found guilty of basically puffing up the value of his properties in order for banks to give him loans. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. That's like me going into a dealership and saying, hey, give me your most, guess like, you know what it is? It's like going into a Mercedes dealership or any high-end luxury brand, whatever name you choose to put in there. You puff up your financials to the point to where you want the bank to approve you to finance or purchase said vehicle. And let's just say you get said vehicle. Let's also say somehow, some way you made the payments on it. Let's say somehow, some way said bank goes back and checks your financials and something doesn't add up. Oh, wait a minute. He didn't make this. He is not associated with this. His job history is not this. His credit's not this. He just committed fraud. Now, what's the difference between me and Trump here? If I do it, I'm in jail for fraud. He does it. He whines and complains the whole thing is rigged. At the same time, says that he has money, won't pay it, even when the amount is lowered to 175, apparently an amount that should be well within the means of a rich man, as he claims, still hasn't paid it. But his lawyers want to argue it's a victimless crime. Let me explain something to you, everybody. There's no such thing as a victimless crime. There isn't. They want to say it is, but it isn't, because the banks were repaid. Well, again, let's use my car analogy. I could have got the car I wanted. I could have somehow, some way made the payments on it. But the bank can still go back, as they usually do, check the paperwork, as they usually do. And it's like, wait a minute. 1 and 2 are not adding up. He must have done something. And because he did it, and he did it knowingly, he committed a crime. So no, there's no such thing as a victimless crime. Because if you still did it, it's still a crime, regardless if it has a person or a thing that was hurt or not hurt or financially hurt by it or whatnot. You still committed a crime. At the same time, Trump still wants to hold on to this belief that somehow he's going to beat this, which is why I'm so glad that the Manhattan DA had sat there and said, we can't delay this enough. Because again, what Trump's whole deal is, because we already know he's got the Republican nomination for president. He knows it. He knows it. We know it. The thing is, he's trying to delay the federal cases. This is why I keep pointing out to you guys since these cases were coming up. See, the civil cases, he'll do those all day because civil doesn't hurt his chances of becoming president, whether he wins them or not. So, whether he loses those civil cases or doesn't lose them, it doesn't matter. still doesn't derail his presidential nomination train. The federal cases, however, do. Because again, if he did lose the man, again, and this is only pointing this out because the federal case is the Manhattan case, not the New York case, to which Miss Letitia James is just salivating on recouping money that was owed to New Yorkers. Unfortunately, that is a civil case. That is not a federal case. Because if it was a federal case, Trump's dreams of running for president again would be up in smoke, which is why the Manhattan case, the case against him in Mar-a-Lago, against the FBI, the case against him in Georgia for federal election tampering, all three of those cases are federal cases. And if one or two, or let's just say the entire trifecta, all went against him, he would be disqualified for running for president because you cannot be federally indicted and still run for president. And again, this is the reason why Trump is trying to push back all his cases. But thankfully, the judge for the Manhattan case sat there and said, no, April 15th is when you're going to have your day in court. And Trump says he has no problem testifying. You know, it didn't work for him in the Jean Carroll case. It didn't work for him with the New York case. I think he might want to keep his mouth shut. But then again, I'm not his lawyers because his lawyers are basically being able to pay for their kids through college for the obscene amount of billing hours they're getting for this man. But hey, when the RNC is backing your bankroll, and again, you're doing things like selling Bibles, well, somehow you're going to make it. And no, I didn't make up the last part. Trump is really out here. If he is not literally the snake oil salesman of the year, first it was his Trump, or I like to call him Con Man 45s. Now he's hawking Bibles, only in America.
Trump is selling pricey Bibles now for $60 with country music star Lee Greenwood. Let's watch some of this sales pitch.
We've lost religion in our country. All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book.
And Garrett, let's talk about this also for a second, because the last time you saw him holding a Bible, it was on, I believe, June 1st, a couple of years ago, standing in front of St. John's Church, and he was holding it upside down.
Well, you might have seen that. I'd been tear gassed a couple blocks away, so I wasn't able to get close enough to it. This is a particularly unusual example of something that we shouldn't be that surprised by. I mean, Donald Trump, throughout the course of his career, has put his name on essentially anything that he can, from water to steaks to the Trump University degree program, such as it was. And I think what we're seeing now is that he has no intention of stopping that trend just because he is a presidential candidate.
And he's right. He's 100% right. He has, outside of the fact that Trump has no shame, the fact that he is selling a Bible, and 50, God bless the USA Bible for $59.99. Because, religion, because it's not just Trump. Let me explain this. It's not just Trump when it comes to this. This is the GOP's three things: faith, family, and guns. They'll always talk about religion. They have to. It's part of their mantra. They'll always talk about family values, even though they get caught with their hands in the cookie jar, especially with LGBTQ plus people on the side, or mistresses that are pregnant, or the health that gets pregnant. You pick your flavor on that. But it always never ceases to amaze me how low Trump will go or sell. Because keep in mind, this is the same guy that did Trump Steaks, Trump Vodka, Trump Airlines, Trump University. The man has no problem selling BS if it means people will buy it. And of course, his Trump MAGA store is a shining example of that, because somehow, some way, people are still buying his merch, still buying his book, still buying whatever he's selling. And all of that goes to basically Trump's legal defense fund, along with the RNC's war chest, which now that his daughter-in-law is running the show as co-chairman, we shouldn't be surprised where the majority of the RNC's funding is going to go. But again, the man is literally and figuratively hawking Bibles. I got nothing for that. Outside of the fact, the last time he held up a Bible, it was upside down, and his favorite book was 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians. Yeah. Good luck with that. Anyway, but also he did actually wind up making his social media Truth Social merger public, which means that there is a chance that he could net $3 billion from the deal, but because of stock market rules, won't be able to touch any of it for 6 months. But again, a lot of people are wondering, when is this man who calls himself who has suggested himself to be Teflon Don, when will he actually see his day in court? And I'm going to be honest with you, I used to sit there and say that he is, I mean, if he dodges all this, then we can't talk about there being equal justice. We can't. Not when Bernie Madoff, because Bernie Madoff screwed over a lot of people in his $10 billion Ponzi scheme. And yet they threw the book at him, then the jail at him. And of course, he's no longer with us. Donald Trump did the same thing on a much smaller scale, but did it for a much longer time. And yet he is given the caveat of chances. So I can understand why people are saying there's two different sets of laws out there, laws for them and laws for us. However, I will withhold judgment until those three big cases, the three big cases I'm talking about. Of course, the one in Manhattan, where again, he's still under the gun for covering up records, for paying a porn star, for the election interference in Georgia, which Fani Willis, who is still on that case as prosecutor, has some words for Trump. And of course, the FBI facing him for the documents that he kept because he believed that he could declassify things, which again, he didn't really understand the meaning of it. And not only held on to documents, but may or may not have spilled national security secrets to unauthorized personnel. When those three cases go through, that's when I'll start seeing exactly what happens. That's when I'll start wondering whether or not justice will be served. But like I said, going back to Georgia, because again, DA Fani Willis is still in the case. And keep in mind, this is after her investigation on whether or not she should remain on the case, simply put, because her and her top prosecutor had a relationship, to which Trump prosecutors could not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the office of Fani Willis was actually using to basically enrich that prosecutor or in the event of causing his divorce. At the same time, the judge who sat there and said that the Trump prosecution did not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, but there's still smoke there, forced Fani Willis to make a decision that either both her and the prosecutor could resign or just the top prosecutor, in which he did. So being cleared of all things and being still back on the case, Mrs. Willis had some few words to say, especially about the case.
District Attorney Fani Willis spent her Saturday at an Easter egg hunt. The event was put together by WAVE, an organization of law enforcement officers dedicated to helping children and the homeless throughout the year. Willis was surprisingly candid, Fred, regarding questions about the last few months of her life, including her Georgia election interfering case against Donald Trump and the scandal brought about by her prior romantic relationship with special prosecutor she appointed for the case. We wanted to know if she feels like she needs to reclaim her reputation, and this was her reply.
I don't feel like my reputation needs to be reclaimed. Let's say it for the record. I'm not embarrassed by anything I've done. I guess my greatest crime is I had a relationship with a man, but that's not something that I find embarrassing in any way. And I know that I have not done anything that's illegal.
The racketeering case was delayed by 2 months. So let's remember, following the revelations about her personal life, her decision-making credibility was also damaged in the eyes of Judge Scott McAfee. But the embattled Fulton County District Attorney said the main case was not delayed because her team never stopped working on it. Let's take a listen.
No, my team's been continuing to work, and I think the media and especially organizations like your own have been paying attention. All while that was going on, we were writing responsive briefs. We were still doing the case in the way that it needed to be done. I don't feel like we've been slowed down at all. I do think that there are efforts to slow down this train, but the train is coming.
This was just moments ago, Erica. This is a California judge with the attorney.
Sorry about that, guys. So again, I give Fani Willis credit on that because she sat there and said that, yeah, her only fault was that she had a relationship. But at the same time, her team is still working on it. And we're moving forward with this case that really could have been in place 2 months ago. So this just goes back to tell you guys, to show you that what Trump is doing on the legal side of things, he knows that these cases, He knows these cases are unavoidable, but he is trying his hardest to push them back. He is trying his hardest to not only push them back, but to a point to where he believes that if he's on the campaign trail, that he can't run a campaign and also be in the court at the same time. Well, again, Trump, I hate to break it to you, you're no longer the president. You no longer get special privileges, which means that you, as a citizen running for the president of the United States again, that yes, if you do have your day in court, you have a day in court. And much like anybody else has been to court, you don't want to miss court because, again, nobody likes a bench warrant and nobody likes a default judgment against you, especially if you don't show up. So let's just say that court case in Georgia is going to be fun. And if the prosecution is exactly like the ones in the DA Fani Willis case, where the DA herself pretty much did an ass whooping from the witness stand, let's just say Trump's going to have his hands full trying to still remain to be a candidate for presidency if he is hit with a federal indictment. But, the next story I got, guys, usually I kind of stay away from because it's Hollywood. Hollywood is weird. People are weird. The Illuminati runs afoot. But never I thought I would be able to say this in 2024 that this actually did happen. And I'm going to be honest with you, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Federal investigators raiding 2 homes owned by hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. His properties in Miami and Los Angeles, part of what we're being told is an ongoing investigation. Law enforcement sources familiar with the matter saying the searches are part of a federal investigation led by the Southern District of New York into alleged human trafficking. No charges have been filed.
Now, Combs faces multiple civil lawsuits accusing him of sex trafficking and sexual assault. He has denied all of the allegations. And joining us now with more on this developing story, attorney and ABC News contributor Brian Buckmeyer, and from outside Sean Diddy Combs' home in Los Angeles, our very own Kana Whitworth. Good to have you both with us. Kana, we'll start with you. So what's the latest on the raid that happened yesterday at both properties there in Los Angeles and in Miami?
Well, DeMarco, I'll tell you, it was certainly a chaotic scene yesterday. You could see these federal investigators here at this property in Beverly Hills. They were carrying out boxes. At one point, they were sort of searching through the pool furniture, opening up the cushions back there. So again, a chaotic scene, not just here, though, in Beverly Hills, but as well as across the country in Miami. When they searched this home here, though, in California, 2 of his adult sons were here. They were removed from the property, but no arrests have been made at this point. But as you guys mentioned, he is involved now in several civil suits. All of the allegations in every single one of these suits involves some sort of sexual harassment, but one of them also involves allegations of rape. And these are all allegations that at this point he denies, but clearly this investigation has taken it up a notch.
And Brian, we have to ask, what does law enforcement need in order to do a search like this?
Yeah, so law enforcement needs what's called probable cause. It's enough information that a reasonable officer would need to suggest or believe that a crime did, is, or will occur. And also, they need to be able to articulate to the judge that they can specifically find certain items of evidence within the home that they want to search.
Let's go back to Kana. So, Kana, what are we hearing from Diddy's accusers?
So we did get a statement from a lawyer yesterday. Now, this lawyer represents 2 of the accusers. One of them is Cassie Ventura, and the other one, they keep the name there as Jane Doe. I want to remind everybody, Cassie Ventura is a former love interest of his, and at one point had her claim against him settled within a single day, and there was no admission of wrongdoing. However, this does continue to grow. And upon this statement from the lawyer, they said, first of all, in part, that they were glad to see all of the law enforcement activity that they did see yesterday. And they said that hopefully this is the beginning of a process that will hold Mr. Combs responsible for what they call depraved conduct. And to Brian's point here, investigators both here in LA and in Miami would have been looking through these homes for anything that would corroborate some of these claims that they say there is possible evidence inside these homes, things like video, surveillance video, even photographs, guys.
And Ryan, we heard Kana mention it earlier, but according to law enforcement sources, Diddy's sons were detained while that LA home was searched. They were released without charges. Is that normal during a search like this?
Yes, Eva, this is extremely normal. It has nothing to do with Sean Combs, the allegations. It's just the nature of executing a search warrant. What officers want to do is make sure that everyone involved is safe, whether it be the people inside the home that they're searching or those who are going into the home, those being the officers, because you don't know who has a weapon inside or who might be startled by this execution of a warrant. But also, as important, if not maybe more so, they want to make sure that the evidence that they're searching for isn't hidden or destroyed. It's another reason why they hit these two locations simultaneously to ensure that if someone was in, for example, Miami and saw that search going on, they weren't texting the people in LA to say, hey, law enforcement might be on their way, hide X, Y, and Z. And so that's the reason why you would detain people so they can't communicate, and also for the safety of everyone involved.
Well, one thing is for certain, this story is far from over. Kana Whitworth and Brian Buckmeyer, again, thanks.
So what's crazy is I never thought in 2024 that you would say Diddy, FBI raid, and sex trafficking all in the same sentence. Again, not surprising, because if you watch Cat Williams said it so eloquently. Sometimes you gotta tell him no, and there are stories that are coming out. So I hate to see the fall of an individual, but if he is guilty, then again, he should be serving the full extent. He should be serving his punishment to the full extent of the law. But our 2024 bingo card is starting to get a little full. That's all I'm saying. But move right along, covering Supreme Court, because again, in the battle for women's bodies, the GOP seeks to basically rob women of it, even taking the abortion pill, which you can get by mail, to the Supreme Court. And again, if you guys have heard me before when I talk about the Supreme Court, I cringe all the time because you have a conservative leading Supreme Court, and we've already seen them make decisions reversing landmark cases. And I can only imagine on this one, if it does get heard by them, how this would go.
The focus today at the Supreme Court. Justices are hearing arguments on whether it's legal to allow the abortion pill mifepristone to be sent by mail without a doctor's visit. This is the first major abortion case to get to the Supreme Court since Roe v. Wade was overturned 2 years ago now. Joining me now is ABC News Supreme Court contributor and professor at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, Kate Shaw. Kate, it's good to see you. I know that a lot of eyes were on the court today. Of course, you can't see, you can only listen, and I know you did. What did you make of the arguments today? You know, when you listen to the judges' questioning, the justices' questionings, you can figure out which way they're going. What did you hear today?
You're right, Phil. This was a widely watched, observed, listened to, in this case, argument. The first real encounter with abortion and the law since the court overruled Roe versus Wade in June of 2022. And I think that the tenor in the room actually was more skeptical about the challengers' case than I think a lot of people anticipated going in. So the challengers here are a group of anti-abortion physicians who are challenging the FDA's regulation of the abortion drug mifepristone. Originally, the challengers were actually asking the federal courts to declare that mifepristone should never have been an approved drug, making an argument that all the way back in the year 2000, when the agency approved the drug, that was basically done wrong and the drug should be, the approval should be revoked and the drug removed from the market. And actually, they were successful in the district court, but that argument didn't prevail in the Court of Appeals. And so in front of the Supreme Court here were just arguments about the conditions in which mifepristone can be prescribed by mail and things like that. And I think here the justices were skeptical that these doctors had the ability to be in court in the first place.
Right, a question of standing. Were they the right ones to bring this before the Supreme Court to begin with? But putting that aside, what kind of precedent could this set? Because this will have wide-ranging effects, not just on mifepristone, right?
That's right. So what the federal government and the drug manufacturer in this case are arguing is that if the federal courts basically second guess the FDA and its approval of mifepristone, essentially that would open a Pandora's box to second guessing any drug and its approval process. And the pharmaceutical industry is very, very concerned about that second guessing. And so they are urging the court to reject this challenge, both as to mifepristone and more broadly as to the FDA.
Well, all eyes on the court, a decision, June it looks like. All right.
Probably end of June.
And end of June. All right. Kate Shaw, thanks.
So yes, we should be very concerned. But I say not we, but women, because I have been saying this, guys, and I will keep saying this. A woman's body is her right. The choices and consequences that come along with those decisions are hers and hers alone, and they should be left alone. because men have complete autonomy over their body and choices. It should be the same for women. But because we do live in a very, very pressed, I wouldn't even say religious, but maybe confused confused morally society, to where people who are pro-life or pro-birth, I like to call them, want to press their morals upon others because they don't like the way they live. And again, that's the start of this whole thing. The fact that there were just enough people on that side to get the people in the Supreme Court to overrule Roe versus Wade. There was just enough people to have abortion laws put in place. So in the event that Roe versus Wade was struck down, those laws turned into place. It was just enough people to make abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood areas and other private practices that actually offer those services to women to simply shut down, because again, you could be tried, you could be tried criminally, or even for murder, as we see in some states. But it doesn't stop abortion. It doesn't, because it made abortion. I mean, the fact that Roe versus Wade made abortion safe, that women didn't have to travel to different states, women didn't have to resort to such tactics that could harm themselves or harm their unborn children. It was the fact that we actually had these things in place that people didn't like, and now that they're not in place, women's health is in danger. And I've always said it best: a woman's body should not be dictated by old white men in a small, shady room. It should be dictated by the women themselves. But the scary part about all this is, again, this is a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. They have already shown they have no problem dismantling a landmark case like Roe versus Wade. They already shown they have no problem dismantling part of affirmative action for college entrances, which affect more than just those that try to enter college. It affects businesses as well. As you see, a lot of DEI programs and initiatives are being removed, as well as positions and people are being fired. So this is all from a conservative-leaning Supreme Court, that now they may hear arguments on whether or not women can receive the abortion pill by the mail. And again, what's scary about this is they could also rule in favor of conservatives. Therefore, again, I don't understand, coming up in this election year, how women can vote for conservatives when they pretty much told you you are nothing more than a breeding machine. That is all I'm saying. But move right along, guys. Another day that Biden does cancel more student loan debt, which again, I'm going to be standing on that. I'm going to be standing on that hill. I will die on that hill.
The Biden administration saying today it's canceling almost $6 billion in student loan debt for nearly 80,000 public service workers. Those eligible include nurses, teachers, firefighters. In a statement announcing the move, President Biden says those workers never got the relief that they were entitled to under the law. The White House will also start emailing another 380,000 borrowers next week to let them know that if they are on track to have their student debt forgiven within the next 2 years.
So again, I get the fact that he did cancel nearly another $6 billion student loan debt, only because he is talking about those that are on the public self-workers program, or these self loans. Which again, if you are working in the public sector and you've made payments, I think it was 5 to 10 years of payments, the rest of your loan is forgiven. Now, granted, there is a backlog of public self loans. Backlogs of income repayment loans. There is a backlog, guys. And this is the thing I'm getting about, that there are backlogs of people that have paid more than a decade of student loans off and got nowhere. Now, according to those programs, if you paid faithfully for that amount of time, then that means the remainder of your debt is forgiven. Now, don't get me wrong about Biden, because Biden did something, and I will give him credit. Biden and Madam Vice President Harris did something. Now, Biden didn't sit there and say he'd wipe out student loan debt. He wanted to wipe out $10,000 to $20,000 of it, which of course did go up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said the president does not have this ability. So the president and Department of Education are looking for other ways of resolving student loan debt, whether it was through for-profit schools that misled students, whether it was for public self-workers, for the backlog of those that have been paying for 10 years plus, for those that may have been under, again, faulty campuses or faulty institutions that use federal funding. Whatever it is, he's been trying to find ways of canceling student loan debt. And don't get me wrong, so far they have really canceled nearly $144 billion for almost 4 million borrowers. So far. And the only reason I get on Biden is because, again, Biden can do more. And when I say he can do more, I say for the fact of the matter, it's just that you can, because not only is there no precedent, there is something that I love to point out all the time. Because whenever I say student loans should be forgiven, that we can forgive nearly our $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, that we can go ahead and forgive it. Why? We forgave businesses. See, there was a program a long time ago called a PPP loan, and that PPP loan was a disaster. It was for businesses to pay their workers during the pandemic so they can keep the lights on, a roof over their heads. At the same time, businesses didn't suffer. At the same time, everybody would be happy, and these businesses would continue on. This was supposed to be designed for small businesses, but larger corporations, people who actually have businesses, including celebrities, all took out PPP loans. And at the same time, there were those on the shady side who may have trumped up their paperwork to get a PPP loan and then spend it like money. But, as the GOP calls it, victimless crimes, which we all know that's not true, because a few of those people that did get those PPP loans illegally did have to pay that back or actually had jail time. So again, victimless crime, my ass. But what I'm getting at is, in this program diverted nearly $787 billion. Think about that for a second. $787 billion was directed to the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, here's the crazy part. A lot of those loans were forgiven. What I mean by forgiven, I mean forgiven by the government. These were businesses that had the ability, that had the means to get loans, that had the assets to get loans, but their loans were forgiven. Nearly 96% of a $787 billion program was forgiven. So who paid for it? The taxpayer, me and you and many others. We paid for businesses and rich people to not pay their PPP loans back. We forgave the debt of businesses, business people, conglomerates, and corporations. We forgave them. So you're telling me that if we forgive businesses, people that have the means, corporations that have the means, if we forgive their debt, we also can forgive student loan debt. Miss me with the whole thing about if you took out a loan, you should pay for it. Yeah, go back after those corporations that did the same thing. Or I was able to pay my way through college. I'm sorry, it's not the 1950s, and everybody's situation is different. But again, when it comes to student loan debt, it is a rock around your neck that you may or may not cut away from yourself. Some people, never see the light of day with student loans. Some people eventually do. But at the same time, what a relief it would be, because again, that's debt, and debt on credit reports is a mother. And having student loans that have a high amount is a definite debt killer. Could keep you from getting a house, could keep you from getting a car, keeps you from getting a job, because jobs look at credit reports too. But just imagine if we did forgive student loan debt, you would have set nearly 200 million Americans plus to be consumers. Because imagine the fact that your credit report, your income is immediately better. But I digress. Speaking of things that could be better, I know I shouldn't put better and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the same sentence, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, after the most recent government shutdown avoidance that went through, as President Biden did sign a new bill to sustain Congress for a little bit longer, Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, you know what? Mike Johnson needs to go.
Of the House that knows how to negotiate, knows how to walk in the room, knows how to hold the line, and knows how to defend America first and the values and the policies that President Trump will bring the next administration.
What exactly will push the supplemental line? What would make you bring it to the floor? You said that it's time to start the process to find a new speaker. What does that process look like without the motion to vacate?
That process allows everyone to have discussions and internal meetings and conversations, and it allows other people to step forward and say their willing to run for
So
speaker.
should Johnson step down from speaker? You would like to see
not at this time. I want to have conversations, and I want to hear from others how they would have handled this.
Have you talked
issue.
to Trump about this?
I have not talked to President Trump about this.
You said there's more support from Republicans. How many Republicans?
I won't give you a number, but I've talked to many who probably won't go public, but silently they're breathing a sigh of relief. Everyone is. You can look at the numbers and the votes of this. This bill was passed without a majority of Republicans. This is a Democrat budget, and it was passed by Mike Johnson.
Should Johnson step down? Should Johnson have stepped down?
That'd be a choice that he would have to make, but we're going to have to find a new speaker.
You saw what happened in the fall. We saw one speaker candidate after another fall short of getting the votes necessary.
Even narrower now.
You can't. I mean, how could you possibly even find someone to succeed Mike Johnson who could get the votes, keep this conference together, and not plunge this chamber into chaos?
We're going to have to do it because the country is in crisis. We have a border invasion that's happening every single day. We have Americans under the age of 30, for the first time it's showing in all types of polling, have lost hope for their future. The younger generations can't afford to buy a home. Inflation is running rampant. Our country is in crisis, and we need real leaders that know how to fight, that know how to walk in a room and don't get rolled by the deep state, and don't get rolled by the Democrats, and don't get rolled into doing whatever it takes to maintain that power and position. We need a Speaker of the House that actually represents the people. This is the people's house. This is not Washington, D.C.'s house. This is the people's house, and that matters.
Just to follow up on that, though, you're calling this a pink slip, a warning sign. The bottom line, you want Speaker Johnson out.
I wouldn't have filed a motion to vacate if I didn't. We need a new speaker. This is not personal against Mike Johnson. He's a very good man, and I have respect for him as a person, but he is not doing the job. The proof is in the vote count today. He passed a budget that should have never been brought to the floor, did not represent our conference, and it was passed with the Democrats and without the majority of the majority.
So what's crazy about this is, people, it's just that number one, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And sorry, guys. Number one, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Why are we surprised? It's, this is a woman who ran on QAnon, who was involved with the January 6th fake patriot / terrorist. This is the same person who wanted to scrap with her fellow politicians, who gets paid for doing nothing, was removed from all duties by one Congress and then reinstalled in the next, is now going to sit there and say, Mike Johnson needs to be vacated because Mike Johnson did what a Speaker of the House is supposed to do. When you have a government crisis, when you have a government shutdown looming, pass a bill. Now, the reason she says is because, well, the last bill didn't have enough majority support. Okay, so what? At the same time, the problem was with the Republicans, who seem to have a memory issue. Forget the fact that they created the mess that they're causing. Oh, well, we have a border crisis. We have a border crisis. No, we don't. We have an immigration problem, true. But the immigration system has been broken since the 60s, and you few people refuse to actually acknowledge that it's a problem. When, there is another party that did actually try to put out a few programs to actually fix path to citizenship, that tried to fix immigration reform. You said that they were too socialist. You said they would derail America, that they would change how we look. When again, America in 20 or 30 years from now is definitely going to change how it is going to be looking differently. So that's not a problem. But the problem is with Marjorie Taylor Greene is that, well, she does do the bidding of one Donald Trump, and that Mike Johnson, which again, I find it funny that she says we need to have discussions before we move on to our next possible speaker. I find it funny that she says we need to have discussions when we forget the last Speaker of the House 15 times to elect him, to elect the former Speaker of the House before Mike Johnson, to elect Mr. Kevin himself 15 times. 15 times that the House had to come together and nominate a Speaker of the House. It took the GOP, again, 15 times to nominate a speaker. And now you want to start the whole process all over again? This is why I say that how in the world could you be a conservative politician on an election period? And what are you going to run on? Are you going to run on the fact that, oh, we did a lot of discussions, but we didn't really pass anything? We had a lot of discussions and we had a lot of interviews. We had a lot of committees. Oh, we tried to impeach Biden once. We dropped our first speaker, got a new speaker, and we're complaining about a border crisis, but we don't have an answer for immigration reform. Oh, and inflation is up, but but inflation is up, but we want to cut Social Security and raise the retirement age. Again, if you're a conservative, what are you really going to run on outside of the fact of blaming Biden and the Democrats, which the GOP every day? I mean, they would have blamed President Obama. They blamed President Obama when he was running. They blamed Clinton when he was running. They blame anytime it's a Republican group that is not in the presidential seat, they will blame the Democrats as that's their problem. Which history has shown us, whenever there's a Republican administration, the economy tanks. Whenever there's a Democratic administration, the economy improves. Numbers don't lie. But again, if Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, which I'm assuming just her, Matt Gaetz, and whatever's left of the crazy Tea Party that's now the Republican Party, may or may not try to bring this up as a motion to vacate the seat for the House of the Speaker. If they do, this will be the only time in the history of Congress that not only one, but two speakers of the House were vacated. Oh, that's going to be fun to watch. Speaking of things that are fun to watch, Candace Owens and The Wire, and the Daily Wire have parted ways. At least that's what they're saying, because if you don't know who Candace Owens is, it's the woman that's scowling as if, it's scowling as if she wants you to know something that you already should know, but telepathically she's not going to tell you. So therefore she's going to sit there and remain constipated. That Candace Owens. For all those that don't remember, Candace herself, a controversial speaker in her own right, a free thinker as she calls herself, the same woman that sat there and said that Black people are on the Democratic plantation, the same person who sat there and said that that Breonna Taylor was a drug dealer. The same person that sat there and said Ahmaud Arbery was basically a humongous setup. The same person who literally thinks that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist unit. I can keep going on. She has said so many outlandish things, especially the two things. Now, of course, beforehand, she did speak on the Israel-Hamas situation. And of course, Ben Shapiro, her boss, who co-owns the Daily Wire, did not take too kindly to Candace Owens' comments on her statements between Hamas and Israel. To which Candace, of course, in her own spot, replied, and I wish I could make this up, but she turns around and she claims Shapiro has been, quote unquote, been acting unprofessional and emotionally unhinged for weeks now. And that Shapiro crossed certain line when you come for scripture and read yourself into it. I will not tolerate it. So again, you did kind of go off on your own boss. And Ben Shapiro, again, is probably just as big as a douche as Tucker Carlson, because Ben Shapiro talks fast. He talks fast. He stares intently because he wants you to think that he's a thinker. He wants you to know that he's on it. He wants his words to be sharp and poignant and eloquent so it hits home. But really, it's a guy that basically is a human word salad. But the funny thing about Ben Shapiro is when he was asked about Candace Owens and their incomplicable split, he didn't have much to say.
Consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the center of a very high profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all.
You can't give me any insight into why she departed?
No hints, no nothing. I'm not going to speak to this.
Can I ask why?
I mean, you can ask.
No, I'm not. You can ask why you don't want to say anything.
Again, you can ask.
I'm only curious because I know what a staunch defender of free speech you are, and it would surprise me if it had been someone's opinions that would make you want to part company with them. However contentious.
I mean, suffice it to say, the only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. Jeremy Boring and Caleb Robinson are in management positions with regard to Candace or anyone else. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform. I've never called for Candace or anyone else for that matter to be banned from YouTube, to be banned from X, to be banned from any platform. That's a different story, obviously, when it comes to any publisher. Any publisher gets to make decisions about what it wishes to purvey and not.
I mean, I'm just not going to labor this, but one more point I would make is it's been reported extensively that the reason for her departure was because her comments have been perceived by people at the Daily Wire as anti-Semitic.
Again, I'm not going to comment on this, Piers.
Okay. Rabbi Shmuley.
Well, again, for a man that believes on speaking on things and making sure his point gets across, and the fact that he calls out stupidity like he believes retirement is stupid, very quiet about the fact that Candace Owens is no longer part of The Wire, which I don't know why. Candace Owens gave us such great hits, like she believes that Adolf Hitler is not such a bad guy, to the point to where the RNC sat there and go, whoa, Candace, talk about black people all you want to, that's fine. We can spin that. But the moment you start talking about Hitler and Nazis, we can't ride with you on that. Or my personal favorite, where she sat there, my personal favorite was when she sat there again. She, much like Jesse Peterson, much like Officer Tate, much like those 1776 twins, these are people that I keep telling you guys about that are just in the profit for pandering. Because here's the thing about the GOP and conservative views. Conservative views do not have a lot of ethnic views from different diversity groups. There are black conservatives out there, sure. But if you ever heard them talk, it's a lot to take on, because every time I hear the words black and conservative, to me it's like an oxymoron. It's like a raised Volvo with a lift kit. It makes no sense, because if you look at what conservatives is now, if you look at what conservative ideals are now, that for the simple fact of the matter is they don't really add up to what we know them to be, and to be also for people, and they're usually against people of color. So again, the GOP was in desperate need of black voices. Enter Candace Owens, a woman whose claim to fame was because with her help with the NAACP that she actually did win her discrimination case many years ago. She was on the Democrat side until she decided to go to the GOP side and found out that it was much more profitable, because that's what it is. Because take for me, for instance, I don't consider myself Democrat or Republican. I've always said I've been progressive. But let's just say that this show all of a sudden decided to go right-wing politics. I turned myself into a mini Fox News. I kid you not. GOPs love to hear black people recite and recant their talking points, because that actually fulfills them in saying we're not racist if black people are saying it. And Candace Owens was the poster child for the RNC, because they love that they could put her in front. They love that she'll repeat their talking points, their narratives to a crowd, and they'll eat it up. That's why I sat there and said Candace could talk about, the struggles with black unity. She talk about struggles with black businesses and with Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ plus, and the fact that she talked about the drag queens. She takes on those things because she was blanket protected. She was. The Daily Wire did blanket protected because, again, the Daily Wire is not, again, a right-wing media organization. And of course, going by those ideals. So Owens was protected. However, she was not so protected. And I keep on telling you guys, when it comes to free speech, I say this all the time. You have the right to say whatever it is that you want to say. but you are not absolved of the consequences that follow once you say it. And Miss Owens found the hard way. And I think that she did get fired. I think that Shapiro did have something to do with it. You know, the whole thing is like, I'm not going to speak on that, which tells me you probably had a hand in it. You probably had a hand in it because you brought her to the Daily Wire. You brought her to Nashville. You gave her own show, which thankfully now that show has ended. However, Miss Owens is still trying to strike out on her own. She says she will not be silent. She's finally free. And I'm like, oh, dear God, what can you think of? What can you say now? But that just goes back to show you guys I'm glad that there's one less panderer out there, because I'm not seeing where else she can go. Maybe she can go to The Blaze. Maybe she can go to Newsweek. But if Tommy Lauren can still survive on Fox News, Candace Owens can go somewhere, I guess. But the pandering, that's the one thing I wish would stop. I wish that Black people would not pander to the GOP for profit, because that's all it is, profit. That is all that it is. It's profit, it's endorsements, it's speaking engagements, it's money, and it's money on a gravy train if you're willing to sell your ideals for it. And I wish I could say I feel sorry for Candace Owens, but yeah, she's a Hitler fan. She deserves everything she got to her. But anyway, moving right along, guys. I wanted to cover this story because usually with Florida is the hold my beer competition of the world. And Governor Ron DeSantis, more like dictator Ron DeSantis, has signed a bill saying that kids under 14 years old may be banned from having a social media account. Here's my question. How are you going to enforce it?
Lawmakers acknowledge there are a lot more obstacles for parents these days. Kids used to just spend all their time outside. Now there's constant household arguments about digital devices and screen time. And some wonder if this new law will actually make any changes.
A playground is a great place to see kids just be kids.
Love ice cream.
You love ice cream?
Yeah. I do love ice cream.
Ryan Hamlin is glad 3-year-old Cora's number one concern is ice cream, but knows bigger worries are on the way the older she gets, like social media.
I think it's gotten kind of out of control, to be honest. I'm on it too much. But as far as like the younger generation, they just need to get outside more.
But is a new state law the right way to make a change?
As far as like regulating stuff, I don't really know how I feel about that.
Governor Ron DeSantis has signed House Bill 3 into law, banning children under 14 from having social media accounts on platforms considered to have addictive qualities. 14 and 15-year-olds need parent consent.
It's going to be hard, right? This is hard. They have made our parenting difficult by addicting our children.
But exactly what platforms are included and how they verify users and obtain that parent permission is not spelled out in the law.
Being buried in those devices all day is not the best way to grow up. It's not the best way to get a good education.
During the governor's bill signing, what was not mentioned, how the law would be enforced, but the social media platforms themselves would be held responsible.
There's no bill powerful enough to keep these kids from social media. It's not possible.
Parents tell us they feel the control needs to be in their hands.
Too much with technology, and it's hard. It's really hard. That's all they want to do.
I know.
And unfortunate.
Yuli Cudiero brought her 9-year-old Samantha to enjoy the fresh air on her day off of school.
I don't think that you should be in Facebook and Twitters and all that stuff. They're too young for that. And I'm trying to control, with her friends, what she does and who she's friend with, it's dangerous.
She doesn't mind a law to help remove her daughter's online presence.
I would cancel her account. Yeah, I will. But she knows she had to be very responsible. And that's why I take her to the playground today. I said, let's just go to the playground, just go for ice creams, my day off too.
Spending time together instead of in front of a screen. Stephanie Suskind, WPT.
But the question remains. How do you enforce it? Now, don't get me wrong. You do want kids to go outside and enjoy the outdoors. But the problem is, the world isn't safe anymore. The world isn't as safe as it used to be. There's too many dangers out there that we do worry about with our kids. However, I love the fact they talk about, well, social media is just too addictive to young children. Okay, how are you going to enforce it? Oh, well, kids under 14 can't have a social media account with their parents' permission. Okay, how are you going to enforce it? Well, we don't really have an answer because you don't. Let me tell you something. As an IT person, let me tell you this. As long as a child has a device that connects to the internet, there is no security measure outside of credit card verification, and that can easily be thwarted to a certain extent. There is nothing short of a ID or credit card valid system that is going to keep anybody away from a public website or app. These apps are designed to be social. These apps are designed to be public and accessible. So again, why are we surprised that now your way of solving things is to put an age limit? We're not China. I hate to break it to you. China and how they've locked down their internet, that's different. Compared to the US, you won't be able to, I'm sorry, there is no way on earth outside of making sure your child does not have a device, a computer, or any other type of device that connects to the internet, any other type of smart device. Outside of that, your child will always find a way. That's just being honest. Even if it's not in your house, you know the old saying, even if it's not in your house, it's in somebody else's house and they can always go access it. So again, the whole thing about social media is this. Yes, I do believe at a certain point, social media should not be in the hands of young children, but they can also be wonderful teaching tools if we basically improved our education. Because that's all it is, education. If our education is better, if our preparation is better, we produce better humans. It's that simple. But to sit there and put restrictions without any way of actually defending it sounds like a useless bill and a waste of taxpayer money. That's all I'm saying. But before we get to our feel good segment, guys, again, this also happened just too recently, and we could not avoid this because, again, this kind of goes in this whole idea of what happens when infrastructure and the billing for it is missing.
Tonight, the view from the air over this disaster, devastating. Chunks of bridge and strips of steel sandwiched across the front of the Dali cargo ship. Crushed containers marking the point where the structure buckled. The rest of the Francis Scott Key Bridge underwater. Late this afternoon, we took off over the crash site. As we fly over this disaster, you can actually see how the bridge collapsed. The cargo vessel crashing in to those concrete pilings, and they essentially cracked, sending the bridge, all that steel, into the cargo vessel and then into the river. The water is 47 degrees, and the bridge was 185 feet, nearly 20 stories above the Patapsco River. The tides and the currents mean the wreckage could be unstable, yet another challenge for rescue workers. From up here, you also get a sense of just how big this ship is, right? It's about 950 feet long, and to put that into perspective, it's about the size of the Empire State Building. And when you look at the deck, nearly every inch of it is covered by containers stacked 10 high.
I got the phone call, I thought it was fake.
Just hours before the collapse, longshoreman Sean Jackson was loading cargo onto the ship. Did you notice anything strange yesterday with the ship or the crew or anything like that when you were loading it?
No, I did not. Just a regular day. You know, I would have never thought in a million years that would happen.
How dark is it out here at 1:30 in the morning?
It's dark. I mean, even in daytime, you really can't see through the water because it's murky, you know? So at nighttime, it's even worse.
At 0600 hours tomorrow, we are hoping to put divers in the water and begin a more detailed search to do our very best to recover those 6 missing people.
And tonight, we're learning more about that missing construction crew that was on the bridge. Contractor Jesus Campos worked with the missing men. He says they're from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They came to Baltimore for a better life and have families waiting at home. He says they were good people, people who came here to work. Tonight, he's praying for a miracle. Tom Llamas, NBC News.
I mean, it's one thing to really do hope for a miracle. Of course, with that wreck, of course, they did explain that there was power failure not once but twice. An anchor was dropped to actually slow down speed, but unfortunately, it did hit the pylon, which did cause the bridge to collapse. Anybody that's ever been in these things realizes that these search and rescues usually become a recovery mission. And I hate to say that at this point, it may just be exactly that. But that does go back to what I'm saying, guys, when it comes to infrastructure bills. We did have an infrastructure bill that was out there for fixing bridges, roads, potholes, things of that nature. And again, leave it to Republicans to shoot that down. Whereas the infrastructure bill that was a part of the bill that was just recently signed by President Biden will help a long way to fix the bridge. But recovery and wreckage must come first. So we can hope for the best, but at this point, it may just be a recovery attempt at this point. So that being said, guys, we are going to move to our feel good segment on usually how the Frack We Got Here, because usually we cover a lot of things during the week that are usually doom and gloom, make you basically make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. We want to leave you guys out some good vibrations, and I try my best to find the stories that'll do just that, because again, this may be showing my age, but I love Doogie Howser as a kid who was smart enough to braze through high school, college, and medical school and become a doctor in sneakers. Well, we might actually have that in the form of a 15-year-old genius herself.
Seeing some STEM sunshine today with a whiz kid that will undoubtedly blow your mind, not just because she's so smart, but she never let anyone tell her no. And well, it paid off. At the age of 13, Elena Anale became the youngest Black person in the United States history to be accepted to medical school. Yeah, you think that's impressive? Well, she was also a NASA intern, Time Magazine's Kid of the Year, and has now launched numerous platforms, including the Brown STEM Girl Foundation. And now to continue the inspiration and jaw-dropping Oz, Elena joins us live from Arizona State University, where she will complete her master's and then pursue her PhD in viral immunology. And I just want to remind you, she's only 15. Elena, it's great to see you. Congratulations.
Great to see you too. Thank you.
So mom says you started reading when you were 3 years old. When did you realize that you weren't like all the other kids at your age?
I think at the age of 3, I was really just focused on the stars and science. I never really thought I was different. I just thought I had dreams that I wanted to accomplish.
Was that tough at times?
At times it was. It depends. I'd say that, I mean, everyone really treated me the same, and they really, saw that, okay, she's going for her dreams. And then there's some who didn't really have the positive effect.
Yeah, no, and I know that some kids, gave you a hard time. They didn't understand, your gift. I know your mom homeschooled you for a while to make sure you were in a kind environment. And so I'm curious, be honest with me. There was some homeschooling going on, but was there a time where you were actually teaching mom?
Teaching mom? I don't know. Really, really supportive. She's been the best at, everything, just making sure that I can, do what I want to do and follow my dreams. So I'd say congratulations, Mom, because you did really good.
Oh, yes, she did. She's pretty remarkable. All right. So we saw this video of you opening up a special package on your Instagram. I want to go ahead and roll that. I understand that this is from one of your special mentors. The daughter of Katherine Johnson actually sent it to you. Katherine, of course, being the mathematician that was instrumental in the return of the Apollo astronauts, who can, we can't forget the amazing film Hidden Figures. Tell me why you were so excited to receive this and what was in the package.
I was really excited to receive that package because it really meant a lot to me. I really looked to Katherine Johnson as, that mentor figure because of all of the work that she's done. She's amazing. And even meeting with about her and talking and being mentored by her as well, it just, it meant a lot for her to send the book for me to be able to see it and say, these are real connections that I have, and these are people that I know. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have the book. I can't believe I made this. It was just an amazing feeling.
Yeah, finally, Catherine and the other ladies, were recognized for the amazing work that they did. And you are continuing to trailblaze. You are a mentor for young Black girls as well, creating the Black STEM Foundation and program. It's so cool to see you in the lab. I have to ask you, because I know you're going to change the world, my friend, but why viral immunology? What's your goal by pursuing your PhD in that?
I have really found the passion for bioimmunology just from learning how amazing viruses are. They have evolved with us over a long time, and we just learning about them, learning about how they've come to be, and the viruses that we're developing to treat these viruses in the future. That's what I want to do. I want to develop vaccines, and also travel and look into healthcare in underrepresented communities as well.
Well, I know you're going to do it. And I love seeing the pictures of you as such a young girl. Heck, you're still young, doing those experiments there in the labs. Elena, we're going to follow you for sure. Can't wait to see all the great things that you do. Congratulations. And it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
So again, a 15-year-old genius that wants to become a virologist. Hey, I'm all for it. Just because, hey, if you don't remember, the person that actually has the corona vaccine, also a Black woman. So again, Black girl magic. That being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. We want to thank you all who watched, who liked, who let this know this is live. I apologize for lateness, guys. Hey, life be life, and so we do what we can. But some shameless plug before I do get out of here, guys. Of course, shout out to my friend Bon at Big BZA Dot. You can definitely check him out, Big BZA Dot on all social media. As for myself, you can find me, Black _Spartan 615 on all the socials. Of course, the link at the bottom, I'll make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bitten Off on this podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Simply put, guys, we cannot do this without you. But also that being said, guys, I keep saying this all the time. We need to have our own platforms. We need to have our own views, our own voices. And if you heard me say this multiple times, I'm going to bring this up again. I am talking about blurstation.com. It is a site, guys, that is exactly that. Because you know how Tubi blew up? Tubi blew up because of Black creators. And unfortunately, Tubi is owned by the same guy that does Fox, which means that he got rich off of our work, our blood, our sweat, our tears, our creativeness. Imagine if we put that into a site of our own. And Blur Station is basically it. Guys, if you want to join it, simply go to blurstation.com, hit the join now button, select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership, and select any affinity member there. Of course, it is $10.99 a month. I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat that again. $10.99 a month. You can watch Blur Station and at the same time still be able to eat. All positives. It's all in my book. At the same time, guys, if you are a content creator and want to join, but want to have your content shown on Blur Station, you have to join Blur Station first, and then you'll be able to speak with the owners from there about getting your content distributed on there. And the beauty part about it is, guys, you keep the rights to your content. They just want a little bit of distribution. But that's all I ask for. A little slice of the pie. You can't be mad about that. But at the same time, guys, this is what we talk about when we sit there and say about having our own, unifying, bringing our resources together. Because and I'm just speaking to Black people because I'm not going to be unapologetic about it. We have this beautiful ability called unity. And when we unify, things great can happen. I mean, come on. We've made birthday parties with scraps. We've made buildings with wood and dirt. We have created movements, simply put, by just sheer force of will. If that is not a power that we need to be taking advantage of right now and putting into areas where it can be more positive and grow these gardens that are just for us and by us to do, I don't know what else to tell you except to do it. But definitely check out blurstation.com. Last, I'll say at least, guys, we are in a presidential election period. I know, we might be in another Donald versus Biden rematch, but learn the candidates, not just the ones at the national level, but the ones at the local levels as well. because the whole idea of how the Frack We Got Here is to get you involved. It is to simply to get you to know, to learn, to act. Because if you don't like the candidates, there are plenty of websites out there that can help you learn how to run in your own city if you choose to. But simply put, we can no longer ignore the outside. We must be active. So the last thing I'll say about the Frack We Got Here, guys, is all about we're not trying to do anything. We're not trying to change.